Silence Audio presents Jump from Inventions, Untold Stories of the Beautiful Era collection, a collection of Amazon original stories, by Daniel Engber, performed by Amy McFadden. A deadly wind arrived in Paris on the early morning of February 4th, 1912, slapping cobblestones and iron balustrades with ice and whipping foam into the Seine. An old man, alone inside his rented room not far from Notre Dame, grew exhausted by the weather and succumbed to hypothermia. Elsewhere in the city, a lady crumpled in the middle of the boulevard, her pulse arrested by the cold. Near the abattoirs of La Villette, a shop boy took a nasty spill on his bicycle when his fingers stiffened and he lost control. And shortly after sunrise, a few minutes shy of 8 o'clock, a bushy-bristled, suicidal little man dressed like a bat stepped out from a motor car on the corner of the Champ de Mars. The dawn cast its light across the Eiffel Tower's ochre lattice from the southeast, sending struts of shadow over where the Batman stood. He was 5'3", with short dark hair tucked beneath an aviator's cap. Franz Reichelt was, on other days than this, a tailor in the city's garment district. Working with a small staff in the parlor of his third-floor flat, he dressed a clientele consisting mostly of his fellow German-speaking immigrants. Now one of his employees, a 19-year-old fabric cutter named Maurice, stood with Reichelt on the frozen ground beneath the tower amid the lampposts and denuded trees, looking up and puffing misty breaths into the air. Maurice had on an overcoat and heavy scarf. Reichelt wore a lavish khaki jumpsuit of his own design. He'd sewn the suit with yards and yards of extra fabric bunched in place with snaps across his breast. The puffy pant legs were cinched up at his knees and then tucked into a pair of shiny boots. And on his back, Reichelt wore a bundled hemisphere of silk, his bat wings, ready to unfurl, fastened to a pair of rods that he'd packed with springs inside a tube. The get-up was both ludicrous and debonair. With his baggy clothes and broad mustache, his heavy brow and pale blue eyes, Reichelt looked like a silent movie gallant who was trapped in a balloon. By the time he arrived, a crowd of several dozen people were already gathered at the Eiffel Tower's western leg. There were men in bowler hats and gloves, police in uniform, reporters, fellow aeronauts, and passers-by. A newsreel man flipped a boxy camera open on its hinge and fiddled with the focus at the back. Charles Pathé, a film producer, equipment manufacturer, and distributor, had introduced the silent documentary format several years before with his firm's trademark golden cockerel. Now, one of Pathé's hired hands began to work the crank for footage of the scene, Reichelt turning slowly in a circle, showing off his suit from every angle, then doffing his cap as if to say hello to future viewers of the film. Or else, perhaps, to say goodbye. The day before, on February 3rd, Reichelt had sat down at the table by the windows of his bedroom at 8 Rue Gaillon and jotted down a will. He was 33 years old, unmarried, and he'd grown angry with his only relative in Paris, his sister and a former seamstress, Katerina. She should not see a penny of his fortune, he scribbled near the bottom of his note. As for the rest of his belongings, including whatever modest income might accrue to his invention, even in his death, these should be delivered, for her devotion, to his trusted cook and housekeeper, Elise. And if the profits weren't modest, he allowed himself to dream. Should my invention bring in more than 3,000 francs per year, he wrote, then the fortune shall be split between my parents and Elise. 3,000 francs per year in profits. Was that really so improbable? He had no idea.